Construction to Last is a podcast by Saint-Gobain about those who invent and live the future of construction. To understand what I'm going to talk about in this episode, which is construction waste, I'll draw a parallel with the textile industry. Like everyone else, I sometimes have to buy clothes, except I'm becoming more and more aware of my carbon footprint. I know that buying new clothes is problematic because this industry emits a lot of greenhouse gases. On the other hand, there are a lot of used clothes in circulation that will take thousands of years to disappear. So, I buy a lot of secondhand clothes, either in thrift stores or on the internet, and it's cheaper than buying new clothes. In the construction industry, it's a bit like that, since construction sites produce a lot of waste that could have a second life. This caught the attention of Sébastien, an entrepreneur that Saint-Gobain introduced me to. In 2018, he founded a platform specializing in the reuse of construction materials. When he had the idea, he was an engineer in a big company. He was advising and accompanying sustainable construction projects.
It has always been my job to aim for a more sober, more environmental construction closer to the real needs of the population and of the construction sector.
Low-carbon construction is a very important subject for Sébastien. And not only for him, since France and Europe have set a zero-carbon objective by 2050. We will have to achieve a balance between greenhouse gas emissions and what our ecosystems are capable of absorbing. This means revolutionizing practices in all industries, especially the building industry. It will take time, but we can already implement virtuous practices.
And in the end, the idea of projecting carbon neutrality to 2050 made me think, do I want to work on the carbon of 2050 or do I want to work on the carbon of 2018? I feel like we need to deal with carbon right here, right now.
To contribute to the collective effort, Sébastien wanted to tackle a central problem in the construction sector: waste. When a construction site is done with, we often find ourselves with a pile of unused materials. For example, shelves that have been removed or excess glass wool.
The word that we completely need to eradicate is the word waste. We build with resources. And to think of them as waste is already to think that they are destined to be abandoned and that they will be cumbersome. And in fact, today we realize that looking at the material with a different eye is to give it the chance not to become waste.
Reusing all these materials is not revolutionary. It has been done for a very long time.
The history of construction and architecture is about using materials that are already there. Ancient Rome was the foundation for Middle Age Rome, which was the foundation for Renaissance Rome. Stones and beams have always had 2, 3, 4, 5 lives.
And that's exactly what Sébastien wanted to do on a large scale: reuse resources from one site to another.
And when I put climate change on top of it, it seems obvious to me that we had to make do with what we already had.
Sébastien therefore launched Cycle Up to help companies resell these unused materials to other players who would need them.
I went with my associates and looked inside dumpsters and convinced day after day craftsmen, contractors, builders, demolishers to make do with materials that were already there, rather than bringing in materials from the other side of the world.
Linking different sites so that everyone can find exactly what they need requires a certain amount of logistics.
Concretely, we need to find deposits, find the location of these materials that can have a second life. Next, we have to make this second life possible, either by transporting them, preparing them, or by storing them. And finally, we must accompany people who want the materials with specific engineering, discussion with the control office, discussion with the insurer, so that everyone is in maximum safety.
This reuse system is interesting for everyone. The companies sell the resources, the buyers save up on the purchase of materials, and Cycle Up collects a commission. But that doesn't mean it's easy.
When you put it like that, you wonder why there are not millions of transactions per day. Well, the reality is that in the middle of all of this, professional practices differ. The entrepreneurial network is not part of that industry. In concrete terms, the building industry is made up of global giants with several 100,000 employees and local craftsmen.
Sébastien has already convinced many manufacturers to join his circular economy project. But for him and for his teams, this is where the real work begins. They now have to find buyers for the materials. It's a huge challenge, and it's taken CycleUp a while to get there. There are two projects in particular that stand out for Sébastien. Two projects that unfold in radically different ways.
The first one was a prestigious Parisian project with an extremely ambitious client who asked us to help him identify materials that could have a second life. And the commercialization went very well. The diagnosis went very well, and we managed to find many buyers for these materials, and we sold the products. But the funny thing is that the first sale was for 300 euros. The big promoter, owner of the project, said, "It's not much, donate it to an association." The second sale, a few days later, was 3,000 euros, and my interlocutor said to me, "I don't know how I'm going to cash this check. I need to think about the accounting line I should charge it to. Well, give it to me, but it's not convenient." And then the third sale was 30,000 euros. Strangely enough, this income was no longer a problem. We managed to integrate it very well. We almost succeeded in finding a second life for everything we had identified as having potential with this project.
Right after that, Sébastien and his teams tackled a second project. They thought it would be even easier to manage than the previous project since it was smaller. It was the renovation of a real estate agency.
And often, when it's real estate that's open to the public, when you do a renovation, you can't stay closed for very long. You have to do the work quickly, you have to diagnose quickly, you have to find the outlets quickly. And we were lighthearted because things were going very well on the other project. We said to ourselves, "You'll see, we'll succeed in selling everything. That's for sure, there's a dynamic." And we didn't manage to sell anything, and everything finally ended up in the dumpster.
Sébastien didn't expect this at all. He sat back and thought, why did the two projects turn out so differently? That's when he realized the difference between the two projects, between the big Parisian construction site and the renovation of the small real estate agency, was time.
In one case, we had given ourselves time to do things. In the other, we had to act quickly. And today, it's true that our circular economy mechanics don't work well with immediate action and short deadlines.
Finding a second life for materials is a challenge that must be met every day, on all construction projects. That's exactly what Sébastien likes. He loves action and working in the field.
On Monday, we can be on a building site. On Tuesday, we can be discussing regulatory development with a minister or an elected official. And on Wednesday, we can be discussing a partnership with a major player in the distribution or trade sector. And so, this reality is that on a daily basis, we are both working on the ground, on the sites, with people who do construction every day, and also trying to think about the future and the evolution of the sector. And that's what's so exciting.
There is more and more work to do, and only 35 people in the team. It's impossible for CycleUp to satisfy all the customers' demands.
We have a lot of energy, but the sector is vast. There are several 100,000 companies in France working on this subject, and transforming everything will be a real challenge. There's room for lots of people.
CycleUp, therefore, needs to work with other companies that have entered the reuse sector. This collaboration is necessary, but not necessarily obvious for an entrepreneur.
It's true that we are educated as entrepreneurs to think we are in a competitive world. You have to win. But on this subject, we will never win alone. We will win with others. And that's why we have to give structure to our sector, why we have to organize cooperation loops between us reuse players. I may not have the deposit that you're looking for, maybe someone else has it. And too bad if I'm not the one satisfying your customer. But at least we will have saved materials from the dumpster. These reflexes of cooperation and competition are things that are slow to transform on a daily basis. I still have competitive reflexes. I always want to be better, stronger, faster, or at a better price than my competitor. But sometimes it's less important than succeeding in saving a deposit and finding a second life for it, even if I'm not the one who makes money in the end.
But that doesn't mean the new construction market will disappear. And that's not what Sébastien wants. He is even forming partnerships with his competitors in the linear economy.
I'll take a simple example. Today, when you walk into a car dealership, you buy both new and used cars. Their maintenance is now done in the same way by the same mechanics, and they have the same financial products to finance them. And so, I'm convinced that a strong cooperation can take place between the linear economy and the circular economy, and that they are not sterile. It will not be one instead of the other. It will be them both together so that the carbon trajectory of the construction industry is rapidly curbed.
This low-carbon construction is our future. But for some, it is already happening. There are people today who live in green buildings, built with sustainable, recycled, or reused solutions. Energy-efficient buildings, too. This is the case of the ABC Rocher residence, which is located in the heart of an eco-district in Grenoble, southeast of France. I was curious to know the daily life of the inhabitants in this housing of the future. So I took the train and went to meet them. This is what we'll hear in the next episode. Construction to Last is a podcast by Saint-Gobain. Animation and writing, Samia Basile. Production and mixing, Martin Commandeur. Coordination, Bartholomew Bell and Kevin Vergobi.